It's going to be so funny to see it over here, and then I'm sure that I got the name wrong. But one of those Italian vampires from from Lost Cabin. They're Spanish. You're right. they're both Latin languages.
Joseph is now exclusively talking about the vampires who pursue the garlic.
That's right. Yes. Oh, it's so true.
Hello once again, friends. Welcome back to an all-new episode of the MTG Thoughtcast. I am your host, John, and I've been here the whole time. But across the screen, or across your ears, my co-host, my brother, your friend, Joseph Rubino.
Heyo, I am here. It's nice not being in the hot seat for the intro for once. This was a nice treat, John. I get princess treatment today. Hello, everybody. I'm doing great. Good to be here. I'm ready to talk about some game changers.
Game changers. I don't know if we're sticking with that as the title name, but that will encompass what we are talking about today, which we are talking about potential cards to include as part of your decks that, while may not necessarily be part of the official's game changer list, I think, and Joseph's taken lead on this topic here, is why I'm doing the intro today. These cards have the potential to drastically alter or change how your deck play goes, and we just kind of wanted to have this fun conversation about this kind of thing of what can you include into your decks that aren't traditional game changers, but have the possibility to change your game.
Yeah, in the world where we're in the bracket system now, and the bracket system is really based on this official list of game changers, we wanted to talk about things that are like game warpers, you know? Like, they're still groaners. When someone plays them, all of a sudden it's that card's game until it's dealt with. It's going to be a fun topic. I have some pretty off-the-wall, off-the-beaten-path picks. But yeah, carry on with the intro here, John.
Yes, excellent. Before we get started with our topic for today, if you are interested to buy any of the cards that you hear about us talking about today, be sure to check out our friends of the channel, our newest sponsors, Mana Pool, one of the greatest up-and-coming new TCG marketplaces with competitive pricing and excellent customer service. You can follow the link in our description down below to purchase all of your cards as you would normal. It gives us a lovely little kickback as you do that, and it supports us here at the show.
Yep.
If you're looking to protect these cards in the most versatile and functional way possible, check out our other friends of the channel, Heavy Play.
Yeah,
oh, my microphone's blocking it. Heavy Play.
He's got the shirt on for the audio-only listeners.
Anyways, Heavy Play is our preferred place for card protection and tabletop accessories with their Equip Mag systems connecting together their tabletop accessories and their sleeves doing the most comfortable and versatile in card protection. You can visit our affiliate code link also in the description box down below, or use checkout code MTG Thoughtcast for 10% off your entire purchase.
Yeah, dude. I just used my whole system with them for the Marvel pre-release a couple weeks ago, and it was so nice. I didn't bring a backpack. I didn't bring anything else. It was just everything clipped and magneted to the playmat with like my sleeves and my sideboard just all right there. And it took me approximately 2 seconds to bundle everything up and move on to the next table. So for pre-releases, it's awesome. For Commander, they have this like deck box carrier that also magnets to the playmat. So that's what I've got my eye on. So that's more of like the Commander night one where you just kind of pick up your bundles and move on to the next table. So definitely go and check them out. Those are our friends over at Heavy Play.
And finally, we wouldn't be able to do anything we do here at the channel without the support of our thought monitors, such as you, that you can check us out and everything that we do at our Discord that you can follow and join in the link down below. Totally free. We don't want your money. We just want you to hang out with us. And finally, of course, everything we do is in support from viewers and listeners such as you. Be sure to drop us things like comments, likes, and subscribes if you enjoy everything you see or listen to here at the Thoughtcast. So with that all being said, Joseph, you are taking lead on our conversation here today. And as we had just briefly mentioned about game changers that aren't game changers, talk to me about that.
Yeah, this idea started rolling around in my head as I was looking at one specific card that I can't stop adding to decks. And it feels so powerful. It feels so game warping. And every time I play it, I'm like, this should not be this strong. This is Pauper All-Star Standard Bearer. That's what got this whole conversation going for me. So Standard Bearer is a 2-mana 1/1. It is a human flag bearer. And it just says, if an opponent plays a spell or ability that could target a flag bearer in play, that player chooses at least one flag bearer as a target. So I started thinking about how ridiculously game warping that is, because it's a 2-mana 1/1 that affects every player. In the instance that somebody has a removal spell for any creature, it now has to target the standard bearer, which is good. They're going to want to do that anyway. So you've protected your commander, you protected your threats with this thing. That's the whole purpose of this. But oh my God, there are so many worse things that happen when a standard bearer is in play that there's so much subtext to it. So let's say you're playing against somebody who is playing an auras deck, right? They can no longer enchant their creatures with their auras. They have to enchant the standard bearer with the auras. And let's say you're playing against somebody who's playing, I would hate to see this with this new Storm Windrider deck that I'm brewing, where it's just like giant growths, the deck. I would have to choose the standard bearer as all of those. If you're playing against the auras player, you can snag all of their auras. It also is, if anybody plays an ability that could target a flag bearer, they have to. So if you're staring down an Aetherflux Reservoir that's about to pop, you play down your standard bearer, and all of a sudden he has to take that hit from the Aetherflux Reservoir. So this is really what got the conversation going for us here, is okay, this is a very cheap and very efficient card that once it's in play, everything that you do has to account for the standard bearer as well. So that's definitely where I want to start off the conversation, is with my good friend Standard Bearer. If I'm playing a white deck, which I play a lot of white decks, I have to actively be talked out of playing Standard Bearer, because it almost in some ways feels like a Lightning Greaves a little bit. And track with me on this one here, where if someone has a Path to Exile, or someone has a Doomblade, or any of these single target removal spells, their options are to either have to hit the standard bearer with it, or hold until the standard bearer dies another way for them to actually get rid of your real threats. So it's it's a cool way to play protection on your commander while also just making everyone rethink every plan that they had for the game that involves single targets for spells or abilities. So that's my first pick for game changers is the standard bearer here, John. You want to take me away with what your mind goes to first for not game changers?
Yeah, I guess actually, you know what? I can just kind of piggyback off of you, because as a matter of fact, something that was on my own list was Lightning Greaves. You bring it up, and I feel a card like this has a very similar application. Obviously, we appreciate and have this card into the mindset of it's kind of an auto include into a lot of different commander decks, and I think that is for the same reason. And I don't know, Lightning Greaves serves a very similar role to the flag bearer, where it's you hate as the opponent to have to burn removal on Lightning Greaves, but I don't think I've ever seen an artifact burned more frequently from things like the Abrades and Banishing Lights and exile-based permanents, whatever, bouncing them off the table. Lightning Greaves always receives that damage, and it makes sense why. Haste and Shroud is incredibly tough to stop. When a commander coming down, equipping for 0 is just a fundamental difference. You now have to basically be considering that as an opponent going up against somebody, if they've got a Lightning Greaves in play, the rest of the game that you have past the point of those Greaves being down, you have to take into account that anything gigantic that they could be, or not even necessarily gigantic, anything that else is part of their deck that is going to fundamentally start making the gameplay work, you have to have in the consideration factor that for no extra charge, they could be doing that faster and with really good protection from spot removal. And that is a consideration factor for putting correct cards in your deck. You know, our favorite thing is flexibility, being able to adjust and adapt your gameplay when effects like this, Lightning Greaves, Standard Bearer, Mother of Runes, I know is a hot one that you want to talk about later on. Things of this nature. If your deck is not prepared to handle like cards that get adjusted and modified to gain abilities that they normally shouldn't, you will lose.
Yeah. The other thing with Lightning Greaves too, you mentioned that Equip 0 is crazy. There's similar to the Standard Bearer, there is so much subtext to that Equip 0 where, like, if you have Mana Dorks come in, all of a sudden your Mana Dorks have haste for a turn, which is all that matters. You know, haste printed on a card only matters typically for the first turn that it's in play anyway. So if you can, like, play a Birds of Paradise and then equip it with the Greaves, and then tap it for 1, and now you can move those Greaves somewhere else. You've just gotten like a free Birds of Paradise. So it allows for like rebates of your Mana Dorks. It allows for activated abilities. You get to, you know, just throw it on, activate those abilities real quick. And typically this is an ability that you don't get. Like, we recently just saw Shang-Chi, from the Marvel set. That's a 2-mana thing that gives your hasters activated abilities. Your activated ability creatures haste for activated abilities. And he is seeing a ton of play. He's seeing a lot of love. But guys, we've had that forever in Lightning Greaves. This is, it's just another version of the same thing. So this is even like, okay, the big thing everyone's talking about right now, right, is the Squirrel Girl and Shang-Chi and any of your creatures can tap for a single mana. Lightning Greaves does the same thing as Shang-Chi because you just move the Lightning Greaves over. You go move the Lightning Greaves, tap it for 1, move the Lightning Greaves, tap it for 1, move the Lightning Greaves, tap it for 1. So there's so much extra utility in these Lightning Greaves. You're dead on. This is exactly it. Like, this is not a game changer, but when this is in play, it warps what that player is doing, and it warps what you have to do to be able to interact with that player in a very meaningful way. So great call on Lightning Greaves here. Yeah, maybe this is just the current era of Commander, where I feel like 3 mana for that effect feels like too much when you could have a Lightning Greaves, or when you could have, even like the Wings of Alexander, or whatever that card is from the Scene kit, that aura. There's just so many ways to give your Standard Bearer costs 2 mana, and it does a very similar thing without giving the haste. There's so many things. I just like, again, maybe this is a hot take, but I've just really started cutting the Swiftfoot boots from most of my decks in favor of things like Lightning Greaves or other more like on curve forms of protection. Sometimes that 1 mana is just a lot when you're playing your commander. You don't want to save up a mana, because even if you do and someone has protection for it, you then like play your commander, you go to equip, and it gets path to exiled. Great. Now you're out your entire turn, and you're 2 more turns away from your commander being played. When the Greaves comes down before your commander, and then they have to hit it that turn, otherwise it's entirely gone. So I'm a Lightning Greaves truther, absolute truther here. I'll stick with another artifact here as we carry on at the speed of conversation here. I have a few artifacts to talk about. I think the first one, I've fallen in love with this card. It gives you so many things to do on your turn that people, like, it's almost impossible as an opponent across the field from a Retrofitter Foundry to understand everything that your opponent can do at the time. So Retrofitter Foundry is the card I'm talking about. It's a single mana, 1 mana for an artifact that has these 4 abilities on it that are cascading down in mana cost. It starts with 3 mana, untap this artifact. 2 mana, tap it to make a 1/1 colorless servo. It also has 1 mana and tap it, sacrifice a servo to make a 1/1 colorless Thopter with flying. These are all artifact creatures, by the way. And then the last ability is just plain old tap it, sacrifice a Thopter to make a 4/4 colorless construct artifact creature token. So this card blows my mind. Every time I've had it in play, I'm like, I can do anything. There's nothing that I can't do right now. I like to see that first. Well, it's pretty rare that I use the first ability, I'm going to be honest. The untap the artifact. The first ability that I really use a lot is the 2 mana to make a servo. So the way that I see that is it's like 2 mana, fog a creature, where if something's attacking you, you now have 2 mana. I can pop out a 1/1 at instant speed and block your creature. Obviously, trample flying is off of this, but even if there's flying coming at you and you've been using this for a while, you can do the ability to sack a servo and make a Thopter. So that's like the main utility of the card to me is like I'm playing off of my turn. I'm going to constantly have something to do before my next turn in rotation, and it is probably going to mess up something that my opponents are trying to do. So like it's similarly to like the Lightning Greaves, you just have to take care of this thing, and it sucks to have to do that because if I've spent like an Abrupt Decay on a Retrofitter Foundry, my opponent has a mana advantage on me, and I've only gotten rid of their 1 mana artifact that eventually is going to win the game for it. So like you go down the chain, the way it's meant to be played is you go down the chain, you make a servo, and then the next turn you sacrifice the servo and it becomes a Thopter, and then the next turn around you sacrifice the Thopter and then you make a 4/4 construct. It doesn't say that you have to sacrifice tokens of those things. So if you're playing Changelings, if you have any other Thopters, if you have any other servos, like anything with Fabricate in your deck that's making more servos, that fast tracks these chains, it gets ridiculous. I mean, the fact that if you're playing in a deck with an Ornithopter, at instant speed, you have a 1 mana artifact that can tap and sacrifice an Ornithopter to make a 4/4 construct. This just pops out bodies and fills your board for a very cheap, because what you're doing is you're spending your leftover mana on this. So like whatever you have access to, like, you know, you finished your turn, you've passed, you're holding up your counterspell, you're holding up your interaction, whatever. By the way, this is a control finisher. This is a, like, if you're playing at flash speed, this card needs to be in your deck because it's the threat of activation that makes it so scary. And your opponents will never know what you're going to do. Are you holding up mana to just use your Retrofitter Foundry? Are you holding up mana because you have a No More Lies? Are you Dovin's Veto or whatever? Like, what are we doing here? My argument for this card is that it fundamentally changes how your opponents view what you're doing with your turn in a way that they can never predict, because you might have a Sphinx's Revelation that you're planning on using. And if no matter how much mana you have, you can use all of it into the Retrofitter Foundry because you can pay 3 and untap it. So like you could go 2 mana, make a servo, pay 3, untap it, and then pay 1 and tap it again. So 6 mana open gets you a 1/1 Thopter out of this thing. If you've already got servos, there is no limit to the amount of mana that you could pump it. If you have infinite mana, God forbid if you have infinite mana, and then you can make an infinite board of 4/4s with your 1 mana artifact that is bluffed every turn going forward. I adore this card.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a similar role application to like Staff of Domination, which can also kind of be in this same conversation point, but just the fact that this comes down much earlier and can immediately start doing what it's looking to do crazy fast, like you said, with any leftover mana as you begin, like as it rolls from the player to your right over to your turn, just be like, just pop out a few more things ready to go for my turn.
Yeah, and you just always have blockers on deck. You've always got, it's a bananas card.
Mm-hmm. But now maybe you might not be making tons of tokens for the next type of card that I get, unless if you had anything more on Retrofitter. I've got an interesting idea here. What is your opinions then of the types of decks that encompass the Soul Sisters?
Oh, brutal.
So, so like, are you retrofittering as often if your opponent is sitting behind classics like Soul Warden, or like the other one that works in conjunction with it, the Soul's Attendant? There's the green one. What's his name? Essence Warden. Thank you very much.
Honorary Oracle.
This type of card is not new to Magic in any capacity. We typically actually get cards like this a lot that just, they will gain you life as creatures come into play, but they don't make ones exactly like Soul Warden or Soul's Attendant as often anymore. And the reason why these two in specific are so special is because actually similar to Blood Artist, these ones look at the entire battlefield. And obviously in their old school traditional days, they just lived as just like one-on-one against a single opponent. But in Commander, potentially turn one, as people are getting their setup and going for, like, you had mentioned in a very similar fashion to like what happens like if your opponent is forced to use a higher mana cost removal. Like, do you ever feel good?
No one's ever using it on Soul Warden.
But what if you don't?
But you have to.
You know what I mean?
I see exactly what you're saying. Soul Warden, we've not read it yet. It's 1 mana for a 1/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. Yours or opponents. It is one of the most brutal turn ones that you can do.
Yeah, I've played both in my Aloro deck for exactly this kind of purpose. You just go like plain Soul Warden, go. Yeah. And now for the next probably almost 4 or 5 turns, as everyone is setting up things like their other mana dorks, their utility creatures, and then eventually their commanders across like 3 minimum if you're in a 4-player pod, 3 other players plus yourself, by the way. Again, the whole battlefield these cards look at.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you'll be up like 10, 11, 15 life before anybody even really starts to consider, wait a minute, maybe we need this off the table. But in that same regard that I was just saying, like, who wants to use Swords to Plowshares on Soul Warden? But
yeah,
you almost have to. It just, there's this dichotomy to it of like, what else are they going to be doing after the Soul Warden that I have to use removal on this thing now? But if I don't use removal on it, they're just going to keep banking up life. And by the way, the amount of like, I make infinite Kiki-Jikis that this thing blanks or whatever,
yes.
Or maybe Kiki-Jiki is a bad example, but like making maybe infinite 1/1s, you know what I mean? Like this blanks anything, or I guess like impact tremors, I guess I should say. Maybe that's a better example here. That like if someone is making an infinite amount of creatures maybe without haste, Soul Warden is offsetting the impact tremors or things of that nature that are pinging you for a single damage if that is applicable. Obviously, there's scaling difference if your opponent has multiple of those triggers down in place, but one-on-one, Soul Warden is beating Impact Tremors. Soul Warden is beating Infinite Pestermites. You know what I mean?
You're also playing white, so you're like probably going to be disrupting a combo while you're, have this thing down. But I would actually argue, because like obviously the obvious application for Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant and Essence Warden are in life gain or tokens decks. I would actually just argue that they're good enough that, like, if you're looking for something to power up your white deck that is not a game changer, put Soul Warden in. Because that, with just Soul Warden, roughly 10% of your games, you're like starting the game at 70, right? Like your opponents are starting at 40, and if you're playing this down as early as you can, in roughly 10% of the games with one of these, you're just going to get 30, 40 life off of it over the course of the game, just on its own for a single mana spell that, again, requires removing, but nobody wants to spend their removal on it. They probably are going to wait until it's board wipe time, but at that point, again, you're already 30 life ahead of everybody else. So if they board wipe after you've already gained 30 life from a Soul Warden, you're fine with that. You're totally fine with that. So there's just no clean way to handle a Soul Warden other than like, okay, I have to lightning bolt this. Like turn one, I would say, okay, let's do some threat. Let's do some threat assessment here. Okay, you're player 1. You have a lightning bolt in hand. Player 2 plays a Birds of Paradise. Player 3 plays a Soul Warden. I think you have to go after the Soul Warden. As much as I want to say bolt the bird, I do think you have to go after the Soul Warden first and then take care of anything else after it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I had for that one. It's just one of my favorites. Yes. I'm a Soul Sisters enjoyer, and the amount of games that I have personally, now granted, I understand that this is coming from somewhere where my Aloro deck is already going exponential on life, but in the instances, like I have been in games where Soul Warden on its own has gained me like 30 something life over the course of its lifespan on the battlefield. You know?
Yep. It's awesome. Again, we're not even talking about the applications when it comes to life gain decks. Like if you're playing anything, this is like an old school reference, but if you're talking about a Johnny's Pride Mate, if you have anything like that, I know like Amalia, Ben Vanaldis or whatever from Lost Caverns of Ixalan is the commander version of, it's going to be so funny to see it over here. And then I'm sure that I got the name wrong. But one of those Italian vampires from Lost Caverns. They're Spanish. You're right. they're both Latin languages.
Joseph is now exclusively talking about the vampires who pursue the garlic.
That's right. Yes. Oh, it's so true. Yeah, like she is a Johnny's Pride Mate in the command zone. So like you obviously are including these in there. And then what's great is like the difference between I know there's one that's like a Rapid that's a single mana 1/2 that gains you a life when a creature you control enters. I forget the name of it, but it'll be up on the screen here.
Something Harbinger, I think.
Maybe. The difference between that and Soul Warden is 3 other players worth of creatures coming in. So for your life gain decks, like you have to be playing the Soul Wardens and those kinds of things. I've like tried to include the worst ones in my decks just for like offloading some of my mental processing in the middle of a game where I'm like, I just don't want to be sitting there and like playing with my life total on everybody's turns. I want to be thinking about what's going on. But boy, it's so much worse. It is literally 4 times as bad to not play the actual Soul Wardens of the game in places where they could be played. But anyway, yeah, great pick. Soul Warden. Excellent. Again, I'm still saying, and maybe another hot take from me is if you're playing white, just throw it in there and you'll probably win more games because you just have a Soul Warden in the deck. It's so excellent. You'll find applications for it. I know I mentioned board wipes. And there is certainly argument that board wipes are game warping on their own, that like Blasphemous Act, those staples are game warping enough that we have to include these cards. Like if you're playing a commander deck, the nature of the game is that you have to be able to deal with a lot of threats at once. So board wipes are a very important part of the game. The most notorious of board wipes, and one that is in fact on the Game Changers list, I would say, is Farewell. Obviously, we don't talk about that card. I know you like Farewell. I don't like Farewell. I don't like that it just restarts the game. But an argument that I have here, and this is one of the only times that I'm going to be talking about like a replacement for a Game Changer card on my list here. But I think more people should play Nevin Ryle's Disc. It's so good, and it's almost Farewell, and the pure aura that you have of playing this thing, it comes in tapped, and you're like, okay, figure it out, otherwise we're restarting. So, is it Nevin Ural's Disc?
Nevin Ural's, yep, you're
Nevin
right.
Nevin Ural's Disc is 4 mana for an artifact, so it's cheaper. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can pay 1 and tap it, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So that's like most of what a Farewell does. Obviously, exile is different. Obviously, getting a graveyard is different. But for 4 mana and then a 5th one on a different installment, getting most of a Farewell on this thing. And again, I actually think the fact that it comes in tapped is a feature and not a bug, because what you can do with it is like a lot of your strategies you want to be not telegraphed, right? Like if your opponents know what you're doing, then they can find a way to get around it. If you play the Nevin Ural's Disc, it is telegraphed what you're planning on doing. So it forces attention away from anything else that you've got. And everyone has to, it's like a false flag operation on your own commander board to play the Nevin Ural's Disc. Because guess what? You don't have to activate it. If you play it, it comes in tapped. You've now you've thrown every flare that you have in the sky and gone, Disc is here. Disc is here. I'm going to blow up everything. It's like a Farewell. And then when it comes back around to you, don't activate it. When it comes back around to you, play your combo. Get around it. It protects everything else that you're doing, while also and then if you untap with it, oh my God, you just have your finger on the trigger of a bazooka, just looking at the field. You're like, go ahead, play anything. I dare you. Let alone the fact that you do not sacrifice the Nevin Ural's disc. And I've seen you do this play, and it's a dirty, dirty play, John. The Nevin Ural's disc does not sacrifice to do its ability. No, it is just one and tap it, and it banks on it destroying itself. If you can give it indestructible, or you can like bounce it back to your hand in response to the trigger, there's a million different ways to not lose the disc and still activate it. And then you have a repeatable bazooka for the board. It's such a cool play. It's a very old school card. Nevin Ural's disc was like 5th edition, 4th edition, maybe. Old school card that I think a lot of people have just forgotten how good it is. And I think people get really scared off by that. It enters tap. And now granted, it's not going to save you in the way that a board wipe is going to save you. But I implore you to think of it as more than a board wipe. And you will see that it does in fact warp the game around itself, as everybody has to halt anything that they either have to win while they are under the gun of this Nevin Ural's disc, or they have to figure out a way to deal with it before they can do anything else. And that is such a beautiful moment for you to find a hole in everyone's strategy and try to sneak yours in underneath it.
The donut hole, is that?
That's right. Yes.
The Doom donut, as we
it is.
like to call it here.
The Doom donut is so good.
I think one of the things that I love the most about this card, maybe sort of evaluating it in the sense of talking it as a multi-permanent type board wipe, which, okay, firstly, that floor itself, by the way, how many board wipes do you get? Again, we talked about Farewell, but like, how many board wipes traditionally come with being able to destroy multiple permanent types?
Like none.
Typically none, yeah? Like, we sometimes see Artifact and Enchantment. You know, I think like Austere Command, you know? You can only pick 2. One of those dual modes can just be blowing all creatures because you're picking the high and low mana cost thing. But, like, typically you see, like, Austere Command do, like, creatures 4 or greater and enchantments.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, costs greater than this, you get to only have, like, 2 things blown up. The other part that I think I really love about this is in that same regard with traditional board wipes. How many of those do you see at instant speed?
Actually, none of them.
Almost none. There's like route, and that's kind of it.
Is route all non-land permanents?
It's creatures, I believe, but it costs 2 more.
I see what you're saying.
Do
yes,
it at
instant speed board wipes. There's not many. There's like not this town ain't big enough for 2 of us. There's the one from OTJ that's got spree. That's at instant speed.
Final Showdown?
Final Showdown. That's the one. Which that's a cool card of itself. But man, yeah, you're dead on. You play the disc, you'll try to make it a turn cycle around, and then you don't activate it on your turn, and you just have an instant speed farewell for a single mana just on deck.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it's excellent. What could you use an instant speed board wipe with that for? I know you have this as part of your conversation as well. I want to steal the gun of this from you. We'll just talk about this back and forth. I think it's time to talk about Alexios.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to shift the conversation at some point to commanders that warp the game around them on their own. And Alexios / Slicer, but I've just seen more Alexios than Slicer these days. Completely game warping commanders that all of a sudden are like, this is Alexios's game now, and we've got to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, what a card to hold up instant speed disc for to blow up. But
yes.
For those unfamiliar, since Alexios debuted from Assassin's Creed that nobody opened, thanks for that, Wizards. Alexios Deimos of Cosmos is 3 and a red for a 4/4 legendary human berserker. He has trample. Alexios attacks each combat if able, can't be sacrificed, and can't attack its owner. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps him, and puts a +1/+1 counter on him. He gains haste until end of turn.
Yep. Yeah, this is a Beyblade, is what he is.
Like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? So you don't get him the first turn that you go to play him unless you have something on your board that gives him haste. But he immediately starts going into action the next turn that somebody gains control of him, which is just the player right after you, you know? That in a traditional 4-player game, he's coming back to you after that first rotation 4 points higher because he'll also get a counter on your upkeep when you gain control of him again. So, and then just a 5/5 trample immediate turn after he comes into play, and he's going to continue to do his BS from there. Like, you and I, we have both been on the receiving end, and we have both played this card before. And every one of our friends that we have played games with where Alexios has either been in the command zone or part of the 99, everybody just grinds to a halt and figures out how do you solve Alexios as soon as he comes down into play.
Yes, dude. It is completely game warping for sure. And I would even argue outside of the command zone, Alexios is still just as game warping. Because like a command zone, obviously you're playing the deck around it, it's telegraphed, people have some time to figure out what to do with Alexios. Like, okay, I have to save my removal for when Alexios is in play. Because he can't be sacrificed, but he can be destroyed, he can be exiled. Where I think Alexios really shines is in a deck like Henzi Toolbox Torre, where people are not prepared for Henzi to let it rip on the Beyblade. And then, well, what's great, so, okay, you mentioned this exactly. If you can give him haste on your turn, that's an extra 4 damage before it comes back to you. Even without that, it deals a total of 18 damage before it comes back to you. Because it's 5 from your first opponent, 6 from your next, 7 from the third. It comes back to you as an 8/8. And then now if you've done an extra 4 damage because it's gotten haste, then you should be able to have done 18 damage to your opponents or potentially 22 damage to your opponents.
Barring like chump blocks and whatever.
But he's got trample, so no one's chump blocking this. So, like, I'm going to soak up 2 of the damage from Alexios. No, you're not going to. You're just going to go, okay, I'm just going to take it. I got to hope that I draw something. So
yeah, because then you don't have a blocker for when player B also goes swinging at you. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, what's awesome is like that ability of can't be sacrificed on Alexios is so powerful for sneak attack decks because that counts for you as well, where you would go, okay, I have to sacrifice this on my end step. Oh, can't be sacrificed. Sorry, he can't be. So like blitzing him in, sneak attacking him in. I wish that Warp worked better with him because I'd play him in my Tanic deck. But I love this. It's a single creature that rather than the traditional like board in a box way of like I'm going to go super wide off of one creature and then use that to get my damage in. You're just passing him around the board and he just keeps hitting people. Now, granted, there's times where he's bad because like if your opponent. If you pass him to an opponent as a 5/5 and one of your opponents has a 6/6 in play, there goes Alexios, right? So you have to time it right, but if you can time it right, he will win the game on his own. If you can get him around the board one time to come back to you as an 8/8, you're done. Like your opponents are completely done from Alexios. So he is. I would argue, as far as commanders go, he is one of the better of the game warpers, as we want to call it, the game changers. I'll talk about another commander while we're talking about commanders that are insanely game warping, and that is a friend of yours, John, and just an absolute nuisance to me is Pramicon Sky Rampart. Why does this card have all the text on it that it does? So Pramicon is blue, red, and white for a 1/5 flying defender wall. As it enters. As it enters, you choose left or right, and then each player may only attack the nearest opponent in the chosen direction and planeswalkers controlled by that opponent. So, like, talk about warping the game around. We talk about things like ghostly prisons, your propaganda is like, oh, don't hit me, those kinds of cards, those like pillow forts. This is the freaking pillow fort Nox, dude. Like you just choose like, okay, I know the way to do this So what's awesome? If you're player 1, player 3 will never be able to attack you because you're not the nearest to the left or the right. So you're going to pick players 2 or 4, either to your right or to your left, and just go, which one of these is going to have the least amount of creatures? And you just choose that they're the only one who can attack you, and then you make everyone else figure it out, you know? So eventually what happens with this, one of your opponents will die, and then that changes your order of left and right. And that's basically the only way to deal with Pramicon. Because again, you're playing, this is a Jeskai deck, so you're playing all of the protection that you can. You're playing all of it. But man, similar to Alexios, if you can play this in the 99 and you can get away from telegraphing that you're doing Pramicon and you can just slam one down when people aren't prepared for it, or maybe they've already spent their removal on your Soul Warden, or maybe they've already spent their removal on your Mother of Runes before she can tap, do all those things. And then you just slam down Pramicon, they're not going to deal with it until it's board wiped, which you're playing blue. So you just counter it. It is a ridiculously protective deck. And a protective creature that just says, hey, rethink everything that you thought that you were going to do for combat here.
Yeah, it's real stupid. Obviously with the restriction of it is a 3-mana card, or a 3-color card, I should say. So, this isn't slapping into every single deck imaginable, but if you can make the colors work in a variety of shells, what an excellent protection thing for a Planeswalkers deck, right? Like as written on the card right there, that can't attack you or Planeswalkers controlled by that person, So like you choose on your left or your right, like who would have better, who would have lesser opportunity to go swinging at my Planeswalkers if you're within these colors to do like a Planeswalker shell, you know what I mean?
Yep. Sweet Pramicon.
That's how you keep those ones alive. But I guess actually, you know what? Talking about Planeswalkers, there is one I wanted to bring up. I think it's everybody's best friend. And I think there is, I know you don't love Planeswalkers, but I think Party Jace still holds his reputation for a reason, because I don't think anybody, this is kind of talking about a game-changing effect that isn't a game changer, probably in a positive way, I suppose, because we haven't had much chat about that. But what I'm talking about is Jace Beleren. And have you ever seen anybody actively hate Jace Beleren? I think everybody is an enjoyer of having Jace Beleren down in play.
I only hate it because I've seen you play it so much. And I know that it is not a gift without consequence.
I don't know. I've played Jace enough to know that as soon as you go, oh, by the way, here comes Party Jace, everybody starts asking, can I have a card?
Can you activate it on everybody? Can you activate it on everybody?
For those unfamiliar, since this version of Jace is not only his original one, but it's quite old nowadays as well, so maybe he doesn't pop up as often anymore. But Jace Beleren, the original card, he's 1 in double blue for a legendary Planeswalker. Jace comes in at 3 loyalty and has 3 activated abilities. For a +2 of loyalty, each player draws a card. For a -1, target player draws a card. And then a -10 to make a target player mill 20 cards.
Yeah, it's hard to say that it's low power for a Planeswalker, but he's so weird and so good.
He's just he has that same vibe as a Howling Mind does, that even if you're not playing it in a group huggy kind of way, a card like Howling Mind traditionally I don't think is a card that people are gunning their removal to go take care of. And a very similar thing with Jace Beleren, that as is the standard with Planeswalkers, they can be attacked and targeted just like a player can be. But in my experience, Jace is typically not the card or not the Planeswalker that people are aiming their removal at, because everyone just loves touching cards. We're Magic players. If we can do anything other than win the game, it's touching cards.
Yep.
And Jace offers that to everybody, obviously including yourself. And there's this interesting dichotomy to it of how do you evaluate Jace? Like, do you think the player is gunning for the -10? Are they playing Jace just to let everybody draw cards? Are they banking up the loyalty counters a little bit so that they can start doing the -1 on themselves? And then he's at too high a loyalty and you've built up your defenses too high that now swinging at him is worthless? There's so many interesting play patterns that it comes to a card like this that also comes down pretty early, turn 2 with ramp, turn 3 just as is. That's still pretty on rate for just a mana more above Howling Mine. You know what I mean?
This is true.
But I've also seen people be on the opposite end of that they just auto lock onto that target player mills 20 cards and down he goes instantly before anyone gets chances for cards. And that's an interesting dynamic of the card. And it's an interesting case study for commander players evaluating planeswalkers is everybody looks at planeswalkers based on their abilities. Everybody latches on to a different part of the card.
You're so right. What's cool about him to me is that you only have to plus him once for him to be like really good. So I'm not a group hug believer. I don't believe in giving my opponents resources, and I think anybody who is giving opponents resources needs to go down first because, you're helping me out a little bit, but you're also helping 2 of my opponents out. Actually, 3 of my opponents out. So you're doing more harm to me than you're doing good by giving me a card with everybody else. So I'm a like target the group hug player guy, but I also... What I love about Jace as compared to something like Howling Mine is you can turn it off anytime you want. You play it on 3, you give everybody a card, everyone's your friend for a second. Now you got this 5 loyalty planeswalker that you just tick down once every turn to just be a personal Howling Mine after that. And then if you're in a position where you can politic with it and be like, well, I was thinking about giving myself a card here, but if you don't attack me next turn, or if you have the top deck of your card and it's going to help us out in this situation, I'm going to make everyone draw cards that you can deal with that. Remember what I did for you. It's that kind of politicking that I don't think is necessarily a group hug strategy that becomes very valuable in the game of Commander in a 4-player format.
I also, by the way, outside of any of this here, I mean, obviously things like Howling Mine can do the same effect. We live now in pretty modern Commander building where there can now be advantage for making your opponents draw cards, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about something blue-black. You do Jace Beleren, and then like the turn, or maybe like the turn before it has been your Orcish Bowmasters, and then Jace Beleren comes down. You know what I mean?
Bow,
like,
bow, 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 bow.
Outside of gift giving, like there is some value to making everybody else draw a card.
Yes, dude. Yes. You also have you've got cards now like I just pulled a King T'Challa from the Marvel set. This is whenever a player draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. So that turns Jace Beleren into each player draws a card. I draw 2 cards, and then on other turns, if your opponents are doing stuff, it's just extra card advantage for stuff like that. You got your Fairy Masterminds that you're like advantage by making other people draw cards. Like you said, Orcish Bowmasters. If you've got like a Narset in play, then now you just get a +2, and his +2 is actually his -1. So it's there's cool ways to do that. If you have any type of like when your opponents, like Scrawling Crawler, like anytime your opponents draw cards, they lose life. There's Shieldred. You're like, each player draws a life. I'm gonna gain 2. Each of you loses 2. That's awesome, dude. It's so sick. I'm a really big fan of this card now that you've really spelled it out for me. But really cool stuff. It also again, if somebody does gun after Jace instead of you, you're kind of fine with that as well because he's just a card advantage engine, and you've got another one of those in the deck. Like he's not like a necessary part to any deck, but he's a really great part of any deck that wants to be doing that thing. So if you get rid of him, he's kind of saving you life as well. It's because that creature that's going after it hastily could be going after you instead and reducing your life total. So you're happy to have a Jason play, especially one that pluses so quickly. Like a 3 mana comes in with 5 loyalty Planeswalker is really great rate. Absolutely love that. Well, I'll bring you to my last one for today, my hear me out pick for the game changers. And this is one of my all-time favorites. It's Descent into Avernus. I couldn't not talk about it. I'm bringing you down with the ship. So Descent into Avernus is 2 and a red for an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 descent counters on Descent into Avernus. Then each player makes X treasure tokens, and Descent into Avernus deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of descent counters on Descent into Avernus. So this card, you can kind of read it like a Mana Flare or like a Rites of Spring or something like that, where it's like everybody is getting resources, everybody's taking damage. You know, it's the Mana Barb Flare Gremlin, whatever that card was from
Barb Flare Gremlin. Yeah, I think
that
so.
one.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That's like, mana taps for 2, but everyone takes 1 whenever they tap a, whatever. Descent into Avernus is kind of that too, because it's just on your upkeep, you are increasing the descent by 2. So the first time around, what's great too is this. Typically, I'm not a fan of this happens on your upkeep kind of cards, but it gives you the first chance to use your treasures. So I am actually a fan of that. I would be less of a fan of this if it was like on each opponent's upkeep they make whatever, or on your end step it makes the treasures and does the damage for everybody. Upkeep is actually a perfect spot for this. We're also like in the world where there's a ton of counter manipulation for any types of permanents. So if you're playing like, God, I want to play like a green-red counters deck with like Doc Samson, the new one that like puts extra counters on any permanent. You've got your doubling season with this is crazy. Primal Vigor with this is crazy. Doubles counters, and I guess the doubling season would be the best of them because it doubles the counters on it and doubles your treasures as compared to everybody else's. So better than Primal Vigor in that case. But yeah, any type of manipulation of the counters. If you're playing like, God, dude, this in like a Kibo Uktabi Prince deck where you're just giving everyone artifact and then they sacrifice it and make your monkeys big. Crazy good. There's just so many decks that I don't know. I don't want to sit and play Commander for 2.5 hours at a time. So I like playing things like Descent into Avernus because it's like, all right, guys, hurry up. Let's go. Here's some treasures. Take some life. Play your cards. Let's go. It's awesome. And I'll tell you what. I've never once had anybody remove Descent into Avernus, ever. It always results in the end of the game one way or another. If you play it, it will stick to the end of the game. Have you ever seen it happen? I've never seen someone target Descent into Avernus to remove it.
Yeah, I mean, not until it's too late. I think
right.
I've had it blown up before, and you know what? And it's funny that you mention it in comparison to stuff like Mana Flare, like Heartbeat of Spring, the green one was actually something that was part of my like list of things I want to talk about. In that same regard, it's like I don't want to be here for 2.5 hours. You know what I mean?
Yep.
MTGO gives everybody an hour time limit for their responses anyway, so like let's do it, right?
Jumping. Are you going to get me talking about round timers again, John?
No.
I got in trouble for that last time.
No. What I mean is just like I think there is an advantage to letting everybody speed up how fast their deck is able to do because you throw somebody for a loop on just like they had no intention or like something that I have actually even seen personally is imagine when you're in a multiplayer game and some of your players do mulligans. They're mulliganing in a sense of what can I do early game as compared to late game. You slam something like if you're from your opener, like Descent into Avernus or Mana Flare, things of that nature. No, like you have mulliganed your hand accordingly that you are going to be taking the highest advantage of that excess mana to yourself as compared to your opponent. It actually is why I am still a strong purveyor of show and tell.
I knew you were going to talk about show and tell.
If you can plan for that to be a part of your opening hand, everyone else has judged their opening hands based on how fast they are going. Yeah. If you are playing cards like Show and Tell, like Mana Flare, Heartbeat of Spring, or Descent into Avernus is like what you're talking about here, you have the foreknowledge, knowing that your gameplay will be sped up way more than everybody else. And even on cards with downside, like Descent into Avernus that deals damage to you, you've got your game plan for the next several turns accounted for, knowing that you've got mana acceleration.
Yeah, dude. It fits the exact bill. You're dead on. Well, you got one more pick to round us out here, John, before we say sayonara.
Oh, I guess so. Okay. I guess. All right. So I'll round out our conversation with a question I actually posed to you prior to us starting the show. These to kind of encompass everything that we have talked about here, as far as game altering cards that are not game changers on the traditional list, but impact the dynamic of the game in their entirety. Where is the line for cards of this nature before they start reaching borderline stacks and tax?
Okay. As in like resource denial cards?
Things that screw up opponents' hands, deny resources, stop particular types of cards from being played, because there's a variety of these types of cards that do that. So, like, I'll tell you what, my case example for a card like this is Possibility Storm.
Okay, yeah.
So where does this card lie in that regard? Possibility Storm is 3 and double red for an enchantment. That when a player casts a spell from their hand, they exile it, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a card that shares a card type with it. The player casts the revealed card without paying its mana cost, and then puts all other cards exiled with the storm on the bottom of their library in a random order. It's a big blocky line of text, but essentially as it reads is, you cast something from your hand, you'll get another spell of the same card type from your library instead of the one that you have cast. So a card of this nature, where it is this one something that's along that borderline of starting to encroach on resource denial and stacks as compared to just a game altering effect? And like, where do those lie as far as could this potentially be a game changer?
It's an interesting place. You pose a really interesting question, and I like it a lot. The Possibility Storm on its own, I feel like it's a genre of deck that I would call like a chaos deck. I don't like them. I think you shouldn't play them. If you're playing this without any type of top deck manipulation or other ways to deny anything, I would say it's just not worth playing something like this if you're banking on like literal random chance for your stuff to fire in advantage for yourself over your opponents.
But you're a gambling man. You're a gambling man.
I'm a gambling man, but I like gambling when the odds are in my favor, you know? Like I'm not just flipping a coin on stuff. Which I am. I play Krark. This is the Possibility Storm. I do think is fascinating because the more pieces that you add into it, it switches its own direction, where you can either play with top deck manipulation, things like Scroll Rack or like Sensei's Divining Top, ways to like make sure the top of your deck is stacked and you cheat the odds. So I think in that case, it's not necessarily resource denial. It's definitely game warping because it's, if this was printed 15 years before it would be called a world enchantment because it affects all of the players and it messes with everybody's hands. I think because you have just as much chance for your opponent to play a Birds of Paradise and flip it into a Blightsteel Colossus as you do the exact same thing. So it warps how everything works. As soon as you start putting in a Scroll Rack or anything, or like God forbid you're playing a deck with like Spirit of the Labyrinth, where now your opponents can only play one spell per turn, but you can still get. Is it Spirit of the Labyrinth?
No, Eidolon of Rhetoric.
That's the one. Yes. It's just your opponents, right? That's how this combo works. Is you get to still cast your stuff.
No, you get locked to one spell a turn as well.
Right. How does that work then? Because there's a way that you get around it.
You could use like Teferi, the mono blue one that does it. There's a Lavinia that also works in the same way.
Oh,
with this.
Sure. But yeah, that's I think if you start including like stacks pieces or like rule of law effects with it is when it becomes like my game plan and my intention is to lock people out of the game. If your game plan and intention is to gamble away. Sure. And then the middle line for that for me is the top deck manipulation stuff, which I think is a really cool strategy. But great final pick there.
Mm-hmm. Chaos as a whole, right? Like that can kind of be a pretty good encompassing factor. But you and I both, we've had conversation with friends of ours in the tabletops that we've played or on our Discord channel that you can join the link to in the description box down below. that there has been some conversation back and forth about like particular types of cards that like somebody like me does not view it as a resource denial card. And then we have others who have been part of that conversation that are like, no, this 100%, you cannot play that anywhere else but bracket 4. Like, that's an interesting conversation to have with somebody. And it just goes to show that every single person, regardless of us all playing the same card game, view cards in a different dichotomy depending on how we enjoy what we play.
Totally. Yep, completely agree. If y'all want to join in the conversation on stuff like that, you should certainly check out our Discord, as John mentioned, link down below. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thanks for listening to us yap on about some game changers that aren't. If you want to let us know down below your thoughts on game warping cards that are not game changers, please leave us a comment down below. And while you're there, if you'd be so kind to subscribe and to give us some likes and loves and hypes and all of the things. Like as I mentioned, we have our Discord link down below as well. If you want to find us on social media, it is MTG Thoughtcast.bsky.social, or you can send us an email at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much again for being here. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you so soon right back here on the MTG Thoughtcast. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to get any of the cards that we talked about, you should check out our friends over at Mana Pool using either the link in the description of this video or the link right here. Get all the cards that you were going to get anyway, and it helps support the channel. And if you want to protect your decks like we do, you got to check out our friends over at Heavy Play. You can go to heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast or use code MTG Thoughtcast at checkout for 10% off of your entire order for favorite deck boxes, dice boxes, and playmats. Thanks so much, and we'll see you so soon.